Hey everyone, Charles Raether from AmLaw Group. One aspect of the EB-5 program I really wanted to highlight, and we decided to make a separate video on this, just to get your attention, is the increasingly widespread use of financing by regional centers to support their investors. So as you're probably aware, and if you've looked at any of our videos and followed our social media over the years, we've talked about the fact that it's a very prevalent and common approach to use borrowed funds for your EB-5 investment. And in the past, the most prevalent or common structures that we would use is the client might get a loan from a friend, possibly a relative, or in some cases, even the investor's own company could lend them the funds. And in recent years, we've seen increased popularity with going to banks and other similar financial institutions to get loans. Now, that last option tends to be a plan B because getting a loan from a bank is generally not an inexpensive proposition. Now, you might have a very good relationship with your bank. They might be able to give you a better interest rate or a better deal. But in most cases, it can be rather expensive when you're borrowing money from a bank. But again, working with friends, relatives, other sources, alternative sources of financing can be advantageous, provided you have friends or relatives that have the needed funds, and just as importantly, can prove the source of those funds. But what about clients in a situation that they don't have any rich relatives and they don't have any great banking relationships where they could borrow the money? What are they to do if they're looking intent on going forward with the EB-5, but they just don't have the adequate funds, or they might have adequate funds, but they can't prove the source? So we've seen a number of regional centers step into the breach here. I mean, I'm exaggerating things. It's not necessarily a breach, but step in, notice a market need in this area, and work to fill it. Namely, we've seen more and more regional centers that are providing direct financing to their investors to alleviate some of these concerns and problems for their investors, and at the same time broaden the base of potential EB-5 investors. So I can't go into names just because of SEC requirements and whatnot, but there are at least 2 regional centers that we're aware of, and there's possibly a few more, that are providing financing directly to their investors. Rates can vary, rates and terms can vary. Sometimes there's an origination fee, sometimes there's not. Sometimes the interest rate, certainly varies. I would say what I've seen is in the range of 5 to 6% recently, but again, that's always subject to change as well. So from an interest rate perspective, I think it's a very reasonable rate. This is technically an unsecured loan that you're getting. No securities required. You're not, mortgaging your house and stuff like that. A 5 or 6 interest rate, I think, is a very great option. As I said, some of the regional centers are charging origination fee. So that's a one-time fee that you might have to charge, maybe 1%, maybe a little bit more of the loan amount, but it's still quite within the range of reasonableness. They do not finance the entire $800,000. The amount of finance depends, I think, on the project itself. I would say generally the max is maybe up to $300, maybe $350 that they're willing to finance. So if you as an investor, you're able to source and collect, let's say $450, $500, maybe $550, the remaining amount can be financed by the regional center. And that opens a whole new set of options, I think, for our clients. So it makes things easier in terms of cash flow. They don't have to necessarily provide and produce all that cash right now, much less B, they don't have to provide all the documentation for that extra cash, which might be a challenge for certain investors. C, it allows them to move forward with the case. They don't have to liquidate any positions they might have in some securities or other investments that might actually accrue a lot over the long term, and therefore the clients would prefer not to liquefy their positions. So I see it as a win-win. And so if you're looking at EB-5 and have had concerns about source of funds, and we've talked a lot about this in some of our other videos, you're concerned about the source of funds, you're concerned about liquidating your positions, or you just have some other issues that have been holding you back because you had some problems collecting that full $800,000, I think this is a great option that you should consider, that if you're looking at going forward with the EB-5, you should consider using these finance options that are being provided by these regional centers. To get more details, these loans entail, who's offering them and what projects they're engaged in, please reach out to us and we'd be more than happy to discuss these options and more with you in order to make your EB-5 experience as comfortable and successful as possible.